Look, man, when I had my surgery, Jamel, I was very fortunate in that I got referred to one of the world's best surgeons. His name was Dr. Matthew Walsh. And Dr. Walsh saved my life on the operating table. He took out my stomach, took out my gallbladder. He took out my spleen. He took out most of my liver, most of my pancreas. He had to rebuild the arteries in the back of my liver and literally took them out of the inside of my thigh and rebuilt them into the back of my liver. He took out a basketball-sized tumor out of my stomach. And so all of it was gone. So I had to relearn how to eat. I could not keep food down for 6 months. And also at this time, I also had been completely ripped away from my real estate business because I was very transactional, wholesaling, doing rehabbing, and it made a lot of money and it's a great business model. But I also realized I had made a big mistake in that I did not have sort of, passive income, perpetual income in perpetuity, all these different things that we do now.
Hey everybody, Jamel Gibbs here. Welcome to another podcast episode. I'm excited to be on today's podcast. We have a very special guest. I've known this special guest for quite some time. We're talking back in 2006 when he launched a short sale course.
Right.
I was actually a part of that initial launch, which I thought was pretty awesome. And that kind of opened up the world for me as far as information when I saw some of the numbers that came in from that launch. But on top of the information world, our special guest is a real estate investor. Number one, he does everything from wholesaling to apartments to helping people find private funding for their real estate investing businesses. In fact, he owns over 2,000, I think you said over 2,500 units at this point, Josh?
That's right, buddy.
But, at the end of the day, he's the real deal, guys, and that's exactly why he's on this podcast today. Josh, man, what's up?
Hey, Jamel, man. I'm so excited to be here. I am so excited to be reconnected with you again. Seems like we're able to connect, a few times a year, face to face. You're moving and shaking, so am I. So when we get to carve out a few minutes and spend some quality time, man, it's important to me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, brother. It's always a pleasure talking with you, man. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? I know a little bit about you, but maybe our guests don't.
Yeah, sure. Let me just give you guys a quick kind of 30 seconds. So I got out of college, was happy to have parents that could help me afford to pay for it. I got private, student loans, the whole thing. And my dad flipped out the second I graduated from college and I took a job as a financial advisor with zero salary. So my story starts as a 22-year-old with no boss, purely becoming an entrepreneur. I was very fortunate, Jamel, to have my father, who I got to see and watch him observe build an employee benefits business. So I was exposed to entrepreneurship in high school, in college. I got to witness that. And so my dad flipped out when he helped me pay for college, expensive 4-year education, played college football. And then I took a job basically following in his footsteps. I said, Dad, look, what did you expect? Did you expect me to go get a job making $36,000 a year like my buddies? Or did you expect me to follow your footsteps of working for myself, working long hours, grinding it out? And so my story really starts following my father, very fortunate. So for your audience that's listening, you've got to find someone in your space, your ecosystem, that is an entrepreneur, that can be an entrepreneurial leader, that can be a coach, someone like Jamel, maybe it's somebody else in your world. Find someone like that you can, hook your wagon to. For me, I was fortunate to be my father. Now, I became a financial advisor, and that's going to help make sense with this story as we talk about private money, because financial advising was fun, but you realize I was advising clients, Jamel, in 2001 during the stock market bubble crash, the great tech bubble crash. I had no clue what was going on. I'll never forget sitting in a hotel in downtown Washington, D.C. I was with my parents and my grandmother. We went there just for a quick 4-day sightseeing tour. And I was watching the stock market go down 700 points a day. Clients are calling me. I had no clue what to tell them. And today, that's the same thing that's going on in the middle of coronavirus, the middle of COVID. Most financial advisors have no clue what's happening with the stock markets. But we can predict what's going to happen with cash flow. We can predict what's going to happen with real estate. So very fortunate at a young age to be exposed to entrepreneurship and the financial markets. Long story short, I started out as a wholesaler, a transaction entrepreneur, primarily focused on short sales. Then I got sick in 2011 with pancreatic cancer, very fortunate. I can share that story a little bit, Jamel, if we want. And then I really saw, because of cancer ripping me away from that business, and I didn't have the capacity to work for about 6 months, literally did not have the capacity to leave my bedroom, leave my house, go talk to sellers, go talk and do deals. I literally had this massive 13-inch, incision in my stomach. I had lots of body parts gone, lots of organs gone. We could talk about that if you want, but I realized, wow, I might be making a lot of money in real estate, but I'm not really wealthy. I don't really have a lot of cash flow.
Right.
And so the last 7 or 8 years, I've been passionate about fixing that mistake that I made by now raising private money, buying assets, and creating long-term wealth and long-term cash flow. So there's lots of lessons there from wholesaling and from owning assets that we can talk about. But that's the 5-minute intro I tried to slam into 30 seconds.
Hey man, I love that story so much, and it really resonates with a lot of people, man. What I really want to dig into for those who are going through something right now. So you were really successful in your business really early on. Obviously, you worked hard. I literally watched your business go from when you first started to where you are right now, man. It's incredible where you are today.
Thanks, man.
I really want to hit home for people who are going through something right now. So you said you had what was it, stage 4 pancreatic cancer?
Yeah, it was stage 3. It was really advanced. But yeah, it was, pancreatic cancer is a death sentence, man.
Pretty much, man. And you're still here talking with us today. We're talking, what was it, 7 years ago or so?
Yeah, it was actually going on 9 years now. You got a good
9
memory. You're right there. It was 2000. It was November 2011, man. So I'll be coming up on my 9-year anniversary in a few months.
Yeah, because I remember, we're talking, you're absolutely right. About 9-10 years ago, I didn't hear from you for a little while.
Yeah.
And, then you came back on the scene, and then you told everybody what was going on, and kind of shocked the world at that point.
That's right.
What type of, you feel comfortable talking about that?
Yeah, absolutely, brother. You bet.
So what can you tell us about that experience?
Yeah, I could tell you it was hell. I could kind of start with that. When I was diagnosed, my wife had just had our 3rd child. My son, Dominic, was born through an emergency C-section. He had a cyst in his neck when my wife was pregnant. And they were very concerned that when he was born, he wouldn't be able to breathe. So he had an emergency C-section, and my wife had basically surgery, and my son had surgery, like in operating rooms that were next to each other. And I also knew at that time that I had this massive lump in my stomach, right? So I'm 35 years old, excited about my future, excited about, having my 3rd child. And then really my life totally turned upside down, because now all of a sudden she's having this emergency C-section. My son's got this lump in his throat, his neck. I've got a lump in my stomach. I'm like, geez, this is not normal. This is not good. I'm 35 years old, pretty young. None of this stuff should be happening to me. And I quickly realized, and I got some really good advice from my father. My father said to me, he said, Josh, there's a reason why God is putting you through this. There's a reason why you're being tested at such a young age. There's a reason why you're being chosen for this. My dad said a couple things to me. He said, I might get a little emotional about this too, brother, so I apologize in advance. But one of the things my dad said to me, he said, first of all, you're probably not going to know all of the reasons why this is going on while you're in the middle of it. It might be 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, until you have all the lessons from this that really reveal themselves. So be patient. There's a plan for this. Second thing he said, a little bit of motivation. He said, look, God gives his greatest warriors his biggest test, right? His greatest warriors, his biggest test. So I started thinking that this is a big test. 35 years old with 3 kids. I had a 2-year-old, a 1-year-old, and now a newborn. I started thinking, wow, man, God must really trust me, because this is a serious test. And so my son was born. He ended up having a surgery to get the lump out of his neck. It was this kind of cyst. And then I was diagnosed 2 weeks later. So my son was still in the ICU recovering when I had to go downtown to the Cleveland Clinic and tell my wife that my CT scan came back and I was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. So imagine telling yourself that you have cancer when she has our newborn in the ICU in recovery, right? So it doesn't get any more messed up than that, my friend. It doesn't get any more messed up. But I also realized that, and this is for all of our audience, no matter what you're going through, whether it's in your real estate business, whether it's in a personal relationship, maybe it's a divorce, maybe it's a bankruptcy, maybe you're having a hard time with your credit score, maybe you're starting to get a new business off the ground. You know, my dad would tell me, Josh, listen, God has a plan for you, but nobody is coming to your rescue. You need to be the one to do the research on how to recover. You need to be the one to figure out how you're going to treat yourself. Doctors will give you advice. They'll tell you what to do, but ultimately you need to make the best decision you can for you. So no matter what the situation is that you're going through, I would tell you, and I'll give everybody the advice to say, look, there's nobody's going to throw you a lifeline. Nobody's going to throw you. If anything, some people like to see people drown. People who are very successful, people like you, Jamel, people want to tear you down a little bit when you've had some success because they haven't had it. People are jealous. They might throw you an anchor that might just sink your butt right to the bottom of the ocean.
Those are called haters.
Yeah, that's called haters, right? Everybody's got a few.
Yep.
But look, man, when I had my surgery, Jamel, I was very fortunate in that I got referred to one of the world's best surgeons. His name was Dr. Matthew Walsh. And Dr. Walsh saved my life on the operating table. He took out my stomach, took out my gallbladder. He took out my spleen. He took out most of my liver, most of my pancreas. He had to rebuild the arteries in the back of my liver and literally took them out of the inside of my thigh and rebuilt them into the back of my liver. He took out a basketball-sized tumor out of my stomach. And so all of it was gone. So I had to relearn how to eat. I had to relearn. I could not keep food down for 6 months. And also at this time, I also had been completely ripped away from my real estate business because I was very transactional, wholesaling, doing rehabbing, and it made a lot of money. And it's a great business model. But I also realized I had made a big mistake in that I did not have sort of, passive income, perpetual income in perpetuity, all these different things that we do now. And those were the lessons to kind of bring this full circle, Jamel. Those are the lessons that my father told me I would learn that I didn't realize back then that I am now still learning today, 9 years later. Wow,
man. Incredible story, man. And I'm happy you pulled through. I'm happy the family is happy and healthy today, man.
Thank you, man.
And, I'm looking forward to seeing where you go from here as well, brother.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
So you, just to kind of transition a little bit, and just so you know, I know a lot of people, if you're listening to Josh's story, if you heard what he just said, if you weren't listening close enough, rewind this podcast. So Josh had a successful business, and he basically had this big dramatic thing happen in his life, and his business kind of went away at that point. And then he had to start all over again. And at the end of the day, we're talking 9 years later, he's even better than when he first started, before he had the cancer.
Right.
So anybody, if you're listening to this story right now, guys, any of you can go from where you are right now, no matter what it is that you're going through, to where you want to go. And the only person that's holding you back is yourself.
That's right.
So what I'm going to encourage you guys to do is to get out there and just take action. Don't be afraid to fail. Understand that there will be hurdles that you're going to have to get over. But if you just keep pushing through, there's light at the end of the tunnel.
That's right.
All right, guys. So just kind of making a transition in our conversation here a little bit. So you got into real estate back in the early 2000s.
Yep, 2005.
2005. You kind of rode the market up. You had this big unfortunate thing happen in your family, and then you had to rebuild. How was that transition from going from very successful to kind of hurting a little bit to starting all over again?
Yeah, again, I think this goes back to what my father had said, is there's going to be things that you're learning along the way that you don't know how important they're going to be in this next phase of your life. And so one of the things that happened, Jamel, was I bought 2 properties right before I have the settlement statements. My surgery was on November 21st, 2011. I have a settlement statement from a closing on November 14th and November 7th. So one a week before surgery, one 2 weeks before surgery. I bought these 2 properties. Instead of wholesaling them, I bought them to rehab, and I raised private capital for both deals. So I had people that I knew that lent me the money. I promised them a 12% return or 15% of my profits, whichever was greater. I bought these 2 properties, and while I was in the hospital, literally recovering, while I was in my master bedroom recovering from surgery for the next several months, I was able to outsource the improvements and turn around and flip and sell these properties through a rehab flip. My investors were excited. They got, it was more than 12% return on their money at the end of the day. And I turned around and looked to myself and said, you know what? I only went to those properties 3 times. I didn't have to go spend a lot of time. I didn't have to swing a hammer. What did I just do right here? In the middle of this surgery, in the middle of this pancreatic cancer recovery, what did I do right? And I realized a couple things. First of all, you can control the entire deal by controlling the funding. Okay. So when you control the funding and you control the release of capital to contractors, you control the release of capital to the title company. When you can control the boots on the ground operator by controlling people's paychecks, that sounds a little bit raw, but by controlling the capital, you can control the deal and you don't have to be on site. So funding equals freedom. That's what I've been telling audiences for years now, is by having access to true private money, I was able to control those deals even though I wasn't on site. And so I was able to get pictures. I was able to get video. I was able to get this from my laptop and my computer from a rehab I was doing that was 45 minutes away. Mind you, I wasn't supposed to drive. I was on all these drugs recovering. So I'm not supposed to go drive to the property. I went a couple times anyway, but I get pictures, video to my computer. I can see the progress. I can get FaceTime. I can see people walking me through the property from my bedroom while I'm recovering from cancer. So I realized, wow, I could control these deals by controlling some of the funding, right? I could have wholesaled them and made some good money. I ended up making about $40,000 on each deal. So that was an epiphany for me. And I thought, what if I could just do that again? So what if I could instead of just doing 2 deals, what if I could spend that investor's money and just do 4 deals a year and make 30, 40 grand a pop? Okay. That's a good start to my recovery. Then what if I could recruit a little bit more capital? And then I started thinking, if I could spend people's money twice a year, if somebody's got 150 grand, 200 grand, and I could buy a property, buy it, rehab it, sell it, then buy it, rehab it, sell it twice in a year, I don't really need that much private money. If I could get $500,000 of private capital, it'd be $1 million a year. I could maybe turn 8 to 12 properties a year at 30 to 40 grand a pop. And that's a good start to my recovery. And then I realized, okay, now this is starting to work. Fast forward to 2014, 15, we're doing 30 to 40 to 50 big rehab projects a year. We're knocking down 25 to 50 grand a pop, and we have $1 million business.
At 40, what was it? I believe you were, because you had a program on that. It was what, 40K?
40K flips.
40K flips.
That's right.
So at $40,000 a pop.
That's right. 40, because that was our average profit, right? Yeah. And then again, things continue to evolve, Jamel. And I think that's one of the lessons that I think everybody needs to remember is business is going to evolve. Business never stays totally stagnant. Either you're growing or you're dying. Either you're getting better or you're dying. Either you're getting better or your competition's about to kick your butt. So if you're going to be an entrepreneur and a real estate entrepreneur, get used to change, get used to evolution, get used to momentum. These are all things that happen. Like we talked about before this podcast, Jamel, you're experiencing a tremendous amount of momentum right now where things just all seem to be going perfect. They all seem to be going right. That's fantastic, right? You experience that wave up and do the best you can with it. It's not going to last forever.
Right.
So how do you maintain that and keep that going as long as you can? And then recognize when that wave is starting to slow down and pivot and do something different. So I did the same thing. 2015, I had raised so much private money. I didn't want to do like 50 to 100 rehabs a year. That's insanity. There's contractors, right? Too many problems. So I started a private equity fund. And the private equity fund was taking other people's money in my fund and basically lending that money out as a private lender. Okay. So again, we pivoted, we used the momentum, but we pivoted. So now I could scale. I could do 25 to 50 of my own rehabs a year, but now I can start to get some passive income by using other people's money in my fund and lend that out as basically sort of a corporate structure of a private lending company. And that's where Freeland was created. Fast forward again, a couple years later, those investors, Jamel, they said to me, look, Josh, this is great. We're getting great returns, but what else do you have? And we started investing in apartments, adding more cash flow. So I guess the story I'm trying to tell everybody here is we started at wholesaling, primarily with short sales, experienced this with cancer, jumped in, pivoted the business, built momentum with rehabbing, pivoted the business, built more momentum doing private lending, pivoted the business again, built more momentum in apartments. And now the smallest apartment that we really want to buy is 80 to 100 units or bigger. And if you just stay doing the same thing forever, not only is it going to get a little bit boring, but you're probably going to get your butt kicked eventually. It's going to lose some of that like happiness, the excitement of business, and that transition, a little bit of a pivot, a little bit of a change allows you to keep that momentum going. So expect that as an entrepreneur. Look forward to it. Don't run away from it.
I love that, man. And, the reason why I love that so much, when you pivot, just like, we're talking, 6-7 months ago when this whole pandemic thing came about, everyone had to stop what they were doing, pivot their business and kind of see where they were going to go moving forward. You did this multiple times throughout the years, and each time you saw growth in your business and in yourself as well. Mm-hmm. So obviously at this point in your business, you're focusing primarily on wholesaling and apartment acquisitions and also raising private funding. Right. What are some of the biggest misconceptions in some of these areas as far as investors getting started?
Sure.
Some of these investment areas.
Sure. So I think for wholesaling, let's talk about that, right? Doesn't matter if it's residential or commercial. Doesn't matter if it's small residential deals or even, small and medium-sized apartments. The really big apartments, those are almost always done off-market through commercial brokers. So let's just take that conversation, set that to the side. Let's talk about residential and small apartment wholesaling. Right now, there's a massive shortage, Jamel. As you know, there's a lot of inventory that's not hitting the market. There's a massive shortage of inventory. I was talking to my friend Darren Bloomquist. Darren is the vice president of market economics at auction.com. So he's basically their economist. And he says to me a couple weeks ago, look, in an average week, the United States, according to the National Association of Realtors, there's about 400,000 properties that are listed for sale. Right now, there's only about 165,000 properties listed for sale every week. So the inventory is down 60%. Okay, so real number from the National Association of Realtors. So what does that mean for wholesalers? Where's the opportunity? The opportunity is if you can focus on off-market acquisitions and then either just straight up wholesaling them or prehabbing them and bringing them to market. There's such a shortage of inventory right now that anybody who's willing to put in some extra work at the front end with marketing and acquisition is easily going to be able to sell those properties on the back end. And that's going to continue for the next probably 12 to 18 months, Jamel, because there's such a shortage of deals, there's such a shortage of properties for both investors and for retail buyers. So let's talk about that for a minute. The strategy that we're using right now is we go into our software, we pull out these lists. My favorite list to pull is absentee owners with high equity properties that are vacant. Okay, so let's say I pull out 2,000 records out of that software. Okay, anybody can do this. Take 2,000 records. Now, we're going to divide those records up. We're going to find 4 guys or 4 partners or 4 team members or 4 college kids that can go drive about 400 to 500 houses each. Okay? Maybe go drive, they pick a neighborhood, they pick a couple zip codes, they put the map together, they go drive those properties. What we're looking for is out of those 2,000 for them to come back with about 10 to 15% of that list that has obvious distress because we took the extra time, the extra step, a little bit of sweat equity time to go drive that list, then come back and say, okay, now we know the property's vacant, the property has high equity, the property is an out-of-town owner, And now we drove the property and we found out that that property actually, we can physically see distress, meaning if it's in the wintertime, there's snow. If it's in the summertime, the grass is not cut. The lawn is not kept. There's no landscaping done. There's, notices on the front door. There's the eviction notices, or there's utility shutoff notices. There's newspapers piling up at the front door. Maybe there's some obvious physical distress to the property. Maybe there's a bunch of mail in the mailbox that's still sitting there for days and days. So we notify that. Now, I don't have to go market to 2,000 properties. Now I'm going to get really deep on those 200 to 300.
I love
now
that.
Now, Jamel, now you're talking about, okay, now we're going to do direct to voicemail. We're going to do text messaging. We're going to hit those with direct mail. We're going to go knock on those doors. Because I know if I put in some extra work at the front end with our marketing efforts, a little bit of extra sweat equity that maybe a couple of years ago I was too lazy to do. Now I'll do it because I know if I can get a deal, I can bring that thing back to market because there's no inventory and it's going to sell, and I'm going to make either a huge rehab profit, a huge wholesale fee. If I'm a realtor, I know I'm going to sell it for a realtor commission. But look, what I tell people, Jamel, is this. When the market's tight, you got to expand your market or expand your marketing. Expand your market, meaning go to a wider market, maybe go out to the rural areas or areas where not a lot of people are going. Expand your market,
right?
Or expand your marketing, which means if you're going to spend your marketing, you don't want to just spend a bunch of extra money. Put in some sweat equity, go drive those properties, physically see them, see if there's distress. If somebody's outside, get out of your car, go talk to them, find out, because that's a deal that nobody else knows about, right?
That's also you bring up a really couple of good points. Number one, people forget that real estate is a hands-on business, is a people's business, right? But
that's right.
I love the fact that what you do, what you've been doing, and you just gave me an idea. I'm going to copy and paste.
Yeah, for sure. Do it, man. That's why we're here.
That's right, man. So I love the fact, because I haven't heard anybody doing this. You are pulling the list and you're sorting through the best leads on the list by going out and physically seeing the property, narrowing down your marketing expense. So you're going to have some time invested up front, but on the back, you're going to be able to talk to less sellers and make a lot more money, get more deals at the end of the day. I love that, man. I haven't heard anybody can do this.
Anybody can do that, Jamel. Anybody. Get a good list that's reliable. I know, again, a little plug for our software, but we can talk about that some other time. I know that's a good list. We've got the U.S. Postal Service that verifies that they're vacant. We know a mortgage amount, so we know there's high equity. We know that there's an out-of-town landlord because it's got a forwarding address to some other destination for the mail. And now we also know that there's some physical distress there. Now if I'm going to go spend money on direct mail, I'm cool with that because I know I'm targeting a really small list. It's really good. I also know the properties that I'm marketing to. We can do text messaging directly to those phone numbers if we can get them. We can do, again, ringless voicemail if we got that software set up, and we can do that. So that's huge. Jamal, I just walked an apartment building yesterday, right? So it's a 16-unit building. We're going to buy it. We're buying it for $540,000. We'll put about $50,000 in. It will be for $600,000. It'll be worth about $1 million when we're done with it.
Awesome, man. Let's talk a little bit about that deal, man.
Yeah. Well, I brought it up because this is another wholesaler in my market, a friend of mine. He does a lot of the similar strategies that I just talked about. We were talking about, look, man, if you can find stuff that's off market and bring it to market, people are fighting over those deals, right? So we're at this building yesterday. We show up. There's like 8 other investors there. A lot of those investors know me because I got, kind of a big name in the market. We've done a great job with branding. I've been around a long time. My business partner pulls up. He drives a really expensive BMW. And, we wear our branded professional coats and shirts. So we want to project success and professionalism in the market. So we walk in with branded, stuff, nice vehicles, buttoned up, ready to go. And a lot of these guys know us, and they're like, "Oh crap, the Freeland guys are here. They're going to walk through." So we've seen these other investors at other investment open houses. They're all bidding on properties, and we always win because we pay all cash, right? We pay all cash, not our cash, but our private investors' cash. So we walk in, but I'm talking with Adam, and he's like, "Hey man, I found this deal off market. We got the list," and then we hit the phones. They hit the phones. So again, expand your marketing, cold calling, ringless voicemail, text message. That's how they found the deal. They say to us, look, Josh, we're marketing this property for 650 grand. But we know you're going to pay all cash. We know you can close inside of 30 days because I've already bought like 8 other properties from these guys in the middle of COVID, all cash. Again, not my cash, private lender cash. And they're like, hey man, if you want to make an offer and buy it, let us know. This is what we want. Now, I'm not going to reveal that price to you, Jamel, or on the podcast because we haven't closed the deal yet. But once we close it in 30 days, I'll tell you. But it's a substantial discount off of what they're asking. And these other people are bidding and they're all kind of try to get it. And they don't even know that we're pretty much, they're going to give it to us. Why? Because we're a reliable buyer. Why are we a reliable buyer, Jamel? Because we focus on raising private money in order to buy these assets now long-term. And so like we have an 80 unit that we're closing on next Friday. We're buying it for 3.7. We're getting a bank loan for about 3 million and we raised 1.5 million of investor equity. That investor equity goes for all of our down payment, our downstroke, plus all the rehab, plus we're paying ourselves $120,000 asset and acquisition fee. So we're all in for 4.5 million. Stabilized value is 6.2 million when we're done with it. Why did we get that deal? It was off market because again, we have access to private money and we can close. We're a reliable buyer. So, you know, those types of things are happening for us now. We've got a 150 unit in Columbus that we're looking at. I've got a 275 unit in Shaker Heights, Ohio. I just walked a 950 unit in Euclid, Ohio. I've got some joint venture partners down in Atlanta that brought me a 100 unit and a 178 unit. These are all deals now that are happening. Why? Because of cancer, because of what my dad said, because I got wise and didn't just focus on wholesaling, because I learned my lesson when I was ripped away from my business to start raising private money. And now my things my dad told me 9 years ago that would start to happen are happening because I raised private capital, because I learned lessons along the way, applied those and continued to pivot. Now we've got access to about $40 million of private money. And I can start to take on these big, large assets now. And I'm a comfortable and educated buyer of those assets. People know we can close. I would have never thought 9 years ago that I'd be making offers on $20 and $40 million apartment deals.
Yeah.
Never. I also, just to be clear here, I also am making offers on 16 unit deals. Like little guys, you know, got things that we can buy that make sense for cash flow. So it doesn't matter what it is. Don't worry about if it's 200 units or 20 units. Buy stuff that cash flows now. That's one of my lessons I learned along the way.
I love that, man. So, you know, we were just talking before the podcast, most of our audience, they're focused on wholesaling real estate. The problem with that is that's active income. Rehabbing is active income. You have to continue to work. You can make a really good living doing it, but you're going to be working forever. You can't get rich. Well, you can't get wealthy off of wholesaling and rehabbing. So you have to add passive income into the equation. So you made the transition. And if, you think about it, if you would have had more passive income, I'm not sure what your circumstances were back then with the cancer, but that would have made life a lot easier for you at the same time, right?
For sure.
So fast forward, because of that situation, you started focusing more on passive income streams, and that kind of got you to where you are today.
Yeah. And Jamel, that's it's a tough decision because there's always the temptation to just keep doing things that put a lot of money in your pocket today, right? There's a lot of deals that we did that we bought for cash flow for long-term that I could have wholesaled or rehabbed and made $8,000, $20,000, $50,000 and taken the income, but we didn't do that. We started building our balance sheet several years ago and saying, okay, we've got to get to the point now where I can sponsor big loans, I can raise big equity. So what I would tell the audience is do a little bit of both, starting from day one. Do the wholesaling for quick cash, but start buying assets now. And we don't buy any single family rentals, Jamel. We only buy duplexes, quads. We try to buy as big of assets as we can. So but I just bought a duplex 2 weeks ago. Yeah. We still buy duplexes. You bet. Nice. Anything that cash flows, brother. If it cash flows, it spends green, I'm buying it. But we want at least 2 units, right? We don't buy any single families, but 2 units, 4 units, 5 units. We got a 16 unit, an 18 unit, a 20 unit, and an 80 unit that are all closing in the next 60 days. So
I love that, man. I love the fact that you buy anything from a duplex all the way up to 1,000 units.
Yeah.
Because most people are one track minded when it comes to, some people don't feel like a duplex is good enough when they have, a 200 unit over here. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
anything that cash flows, you're buying. I love
Yeah,
it.
especially if you can do it in a geographical area where you can get some scale, right? So the duplexes and the quads are tougher to scale because they're all in different areas on different streets. But if you focus on a couple zip codes and you're buying kind of close to each other, then you can have a maintenance guy and a leasing agent who can kind of take care of those, similar to a apartment building that might be 100 units all on one site. You can treat it the same. They're just, a little bit more fragmented down the street from each other, or a 10-minute drive to each other. We don't want one duplex over here and another one that's an hour away. We want to keep them in a similar zip code, but you can build a nice portfolio that way and build some scale. So here's a couple numbers, Jamel, that will help. Every duplex that we buy, every small 1 to 4 unit, smaller apartment, we make about $250 per month of net free cash flow. After expenses and after debt service, we make about $3,000 a year. Mm-hmm. On the apartments, we make about half that. Okay, so apartments are sexy, everybody wants to buy them, but truth is, per door, we're only making about $1,300 to $1,500 a year per unit with the larger apartments.
Right.
So people say, "Oh, I only buy apartments." Yes, but we can actually make more cash flow per door, per unit, with residential for 2 to 4 units or 2 to 10 units. So those have value to us. They have value because one duplex is going to make us about $3,000 a year. Not setting the world on fire, but if you buy 10 of those,
we're
making $30,000 a year.
Yep.
Yeah, singles and doubles, brother.
That's
so
right.
It spends 30,000 spends, whether it's an apartment building or 10 duplexes.
Man, that's just a fantastic way to look at investing in general, because even me, I'm guilty of it myself. I'm looking for larger apartments. Even though I invest in smaller apartments, you're telling me right now that sometimes when you look into the larger units, you're not making as much per door. So
That's right.
So if I focus on smaller apartments, I can make more cash flow on a monthly basis, man.
No doubt. And Jamel, here's the thing. When you buy a big apartment deals, let's say 100 units or more, it's always very much a team game. You have an attorney that has some equity in the deal. You have the boots on the ground operator that has some equity in the deal. You've got maybe a couple of loan sponsors and syndicators that have equity in the deal. So you might have 3 to 5 general partners, and they're all splitting up their equity. So there is a lot to be said for what if I just go buy a 30 unit and I own it all myself versus owning 150 unit, but I only own 20% of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it's the same. If you look at the numbers, it's still the same. You just
exactly.
You have more control when you own the entire property.
That's right. I would just tell people, look for the big assets for sure. You want to buy 100 unit, 200 unit, 300 unit, great. But there's a lot of money. A lot of my buddies that have big apartment portfolios, they still are buying those 20 units and 25 units. And they got their start buying those, 18 units and 25 unit deals. And that built their balance sheet to the point where they could tell a bank, they could tell a seller, they could tell a commercial realtor, hey, I've got 100 units in these 5 smaller buildings, or I've got 400 units, but they're 50 unit buildings or 25 unit buildings, but they built up a nice portfolio. And look at it this way, Jamel, the number to me is 950. Okay. 950, right? Burn that into your brain. 950 units of apartments generates $1.2 million a year of net free spendable cash flow.
Nice.
Okay? So 950, and the reason why I get that is we make about $1,300 to $1,500 per year per unit. Exactly. So that's about 1.2. My number was I want to add another $100,000 a month to my net free cash flow.
Okay? And 950 units does that for you.
Yeah. Now here's the thing: 400 units of residential does the same thing.
Wow.
Because remember, we're making about $3,000 a year with the resi deals per door. We're making about $1,300 to $1,500 on the commercial deals per door. So 400 units of smaller apartments that has more cash flow, or duplexes and quads that is the same cash flow yields me the same net result, which is $100,000 a month of net free spendable cash flow. It's the same. So I have a management company. It's called 950 Management. Okay. It's because we want to add another 950 doors to our portfolio.
Full circle.
But I'll happily also take 400 resi deals, bro, because it's $1 million, 1.2 million of net free spendable cash. So it doesn't matter how you get there, man. Let's not be biased. Let's just get there. It doesn't matter if it's big deals, small deals. Let's just get there.
That's right, man. So when you look at it from a bird's eye view, basically, if you could buy less residential deals to make the same amount as if you were to double the commercial deals, and you can have more ownership in a residential than you would in a commercial as well, right?
That's right. And I would say just like you're talking about, if you're getting started, do wholesaling for quick cash, be transactional because you want to build up your income real big, but also start buying rentals now, right? Buy those duplexes, quads. Same thing when you're really focused on building your portfolio. Don't just say like, I'm only going to do commercial, right? Also because, Jamel, you might only do 2 to 3 big commercial deals a year.
Yeah.
You might make an offer on 70 deals and get 2 of them. So what are you going to do with the rest of your time, right? You might as well go get those singles and doubles, buy those, and continue to build your cash flow.
I would think it would be easier to get residential than commercial deals all the way around.
It is. No doubt,
man. So if we had to give our listeners let's say a 5-step process to get started, what would be that 5-step process from going from where they are right now to where they want to go in real estate, whether it be, I know we're focusing primarily on funding and apartments in this, on this podcast. If they wanted to get started doing that, what would be those steps?
Yeah. So let's specifically talk about 5 steps for getting and raising money. Okay. Step number 1 is to create a specific, what I call irresistible offer for what you're going to pay your private lenders. Okay. So here's some examples. If you're doing rehab flips, I paid my investors 12% interest or 15% of my profits, whichever was greater. And Jamel, that only worked 100% of the time. It only worked 100% because when I would present that to an investor and say, look, I'm going to buy this property for 100, I'm going to put 25 into it, I'll pay you 12% interest on your money or 15% of my profits, whatever's greater. They're like, well, the minimum is going to get is 12? Yes. So an irresistible offer for apartments, what we'll do is we'll pay investors 10% preferred return, plus we give them a piece of equity in the deal. It might be very small, it might be 1% equity. But now they know, even if we refinance and pay them back all their principal, they've got perpetual cash flow for the rest of their life. That's irresistible, right? So come up with something. If it's a rental property, we would pay 10% interest and give them 10% of the equity, right? Because if we're making $250 a month, like I said before on those resi deals, they're getting $25 a month. It's 10%. It's not going to set the world on fire, but they're going to start to build up a little bit of residual income. So I'm okay with giving up a little piece of my profit or a little piece of my equity. It's irresistible. Nobody says no. Okay. So that's number 1. Number 2 is really to identify who's your ideal avatar investor. Okay. I've kind of got 3, right? Who is the ideal person to invest in your deals? At the beginning, I would raise money from anybody, Jamel, that I can get in front of. I would have a conversation about real estate. I would tell them about how I was paying investors 12% interest or 15% of the profit. I would say, hey, I'm not assuming that you're interested in investing or lending at all, but if you know anyone who would be potentially interested in getting a 12% return or more, just refer them to me and I'll educate them about how this works, just like I'm educating you. Well, what everybody would say when we're done with the conversation is, hey man, what about me? I don't want to refer you to my friends. What about me? I want that 12% return. So because I sort of pitched it in a very non-assuming, non-threatening way and very conversational, I didn't even say, hey, will you invest in my deals? Matter of fact, I switched it and said, hey, I'm not assuming you have any money. I'm not assuming you're interested. I just want to educate you on what I'm doing in case you know someone. So it was that exclusion mentality They turned around and said, hey, what about me? I'm right here in front of you. I've got 150 grand. I've got 500 grand. I got 50 grand. Can I get 12% return? And they love me even more because I didn't pitch them, right? So step number 2 is identify your ideal avatar. At the beginning, take anybody. Go present to everybody. Go talk to everybody, but don't pitch them. Present to them. Ask them if they know someone, and they will convince themselves to work with you. Okay? But the ideal avatar for me, I love working with e-commerce guys. Jamel, you know a lot of e-com guys that have Amazon businesses. Those guys, you know, if they have a successful business, make a lot of free cash flow. They have a lot of equity. Sometimes they sell their business for a windfall. I love working with e-com guys. I love working with Fortune 500 guys or corporate guys who are retired, guys who've been in the grind for 35 years that now have a pension and a 401k. That's one of my avatars. And of course, I go to meetups, REIA clubs, webinars, podcasts, and I present and talk to those real estate audiences. That's number 2, is identify your avatar. Number 3 is you have to ask yourself, where can this ideal investor be found? And just go associate there, right? If the avatar is the executive who's retired, maybe they hang out at their homeowners association meetings. Go to the homeowners association meetings. Maybe those guys go to a golf course. Go get a golf club membership. Maybe the guys are going, if it's a real estate audience, they're hanging out at a REIA club or a meetup. Go to those audiences. If it's an e-commerce avatar, go to e-commerce events and just have conversations at the bar, have conversations in the hallway. Where can your ideal investor be found? That's step number 3. Step number 4 is once you find those investors, again, you're just collecting business cards, you're collecting phone numbers, collecting email addresses. Now, step number 4, you've got to find a way to have a regular, recurring marketing plan to stay in front of them so that when they are ready to invest, they're thinking of you, okay? I'll tell you a story, Jamel. I met a guy in 2015. My friend Sean says, hey, man, let's go down to North Carolina, play some golf. I've got some buddies down there. Let's go play some golf. I said, great, let's go. I fly down in the morning. It's a Wednesday. We arrive at like 8 in the morning, get to the country club. We go play golf. I hang out all day with the guys, and I leave the next morning. Well, at the end of the first night, we had dinner. We started talking a little bit about real estate, what we do. 2 of those guys now, 2015, mind you, 3 years later, the first guy invests with me $100,000.
Wow.
Now he's got $1.2 million with me. Okay? So met him in 2015. He didn't invest any money, but I stayed in touch with him for 3 years. I would send him links to podcasts. I would send him emails. I would send him deal flow. I would send him what we call funding opportunities or funding opportunity sheets. And I would say, hey, his name was Brandon. Hey, Brandon, I'm not interested, assuming that you're interested in investing in this deal, but I just want you to see the type of deals that I'm doing. Check out this deal. We're paying a 12% return. Check out this apartment. We're paying 10% plus equity. If you're ever interested, let me know if you have questions. So I just nudged on him, man, for 3 years. Now he invested. Now he's got 1.2 million with us. The second guy, all relationship, but it's staying in touch with people in a cool way.
Yeah.
Right. Like nobody likes the nagging girlfriend, the nagging boyfriend. Right. Nobody likes that. But what they do like is, hey, here's a subtle reminder. Whenever you're ready, I'm here. Okay. So we do webinars, podcasts, Zoom calls. We invite people onto Zoom calls. We don't sell anything. We actually educate about previous deals that we've done and said, hey, this deal is not available anymore. But if there's ever a deal like this in the future, would you be potentially interested in learning more about it? Okay. So regular, recurring, multiple medium marketing over and over. When people are ready to invest, they're going to invest. I had a guy call me yesterday. He's like, hey, Josh, I just sold my business last year. I'm ready to invest. I just sold my business for 1.6 million. I've been nudging on the guy for 3 years. I played Top Golf with him in Dallas. I'm from Cleveland. I played Top Golf with him in Dallas back in 2017. He's finally ready. Finally, step number 5, Jamel, is listen, follow a proven sales process. So I know when I pitch a private lender, the first call, I always do the same thing. I get on the phone with them. I say, look, I know you're interested in learning about our deals, or I know you're interested about learning more, but here, look, this first call, I have an obligation through the Securities and Exchange Commission that I have to develop a prior existing relationship with you. So I'd love to show you deals. I'd love to talk about returns, but I actually am not allowed to. So this first call is all about you. So help me understand a little bit about you. So now I just start peppering them with questions. Remember, Jamel, the guy who asks the questions is in control. Okay? So I've used the SEC. So if he starts peppering me with questions, I'm on my heels. If I start peppering him with questions, I'm in control. So I use the SEC to my advantage by saying, look, even if you ask me a bunch of questions about my deals, I really can't tell you until we have an existing relationship. So I'm going to ask you a lot of questions. So then I start, do you have a CPA? Do you have an attorney? Do you have a spouse that's going to help you make decisions? Have you invested in 401ks, IRAs? Have you done real estate deals, oil and gas, crypto, cannabis? What have you invested in before? I get all this stuff and I learn about their risk tolerance. Then I say, look, the next time we get together, number 2, I'll start to show you some past deals that we've done in the past. If that starts to make sense. Then step number 3, then I'll show them an offer, an actual deal that I'm about to do. And I'll present them an investing opportunity. Right?
So it's really a 3-touch thing, just so you can abide by the law pretty much, right?
That's right. So step number 5 has 5 A, B, and C. A is I'm peppering them with questions, trying to keep control and learn what I need to know so I can check the box off from the SEC. Step number 5B is now I'm going to show them an old deal, a deal that went well, obviously, a deal that made money for everybody, a deal that had a good return. I'll show them that. And then step number 5C is I'll say, hey, I know the guy's at this point, he's looking to invest, or the girl's, interested in investing. Now I'll show them I've got that existing relationship and I'll show them an actual deal. But here's the last piece. There's sort of a step 6, which is not really in the system, Jamel, but step 6 is you want to have a deal that you can close that has urgency to it. Okay. So what I'd like to do is I like to show them a deal that I'm about to close in the next 2 to 4 weeks and say, look, I've got this deal. I've got another investor kind of lined up, but if you want to get involved, I can slide them out and slide you in, and you could fund this deal in the next 2 to 4 weeks, and we can go ahead and get started.
Scarcity play, man.
That's right. So I use all the tools of control through questions, right? Non-assuming sales by saying, hey, I'm not assuming you're interested, but let me tell you a little bit more about what I do in case you know someone.
Then you're not coming across like the car salesman type.
That's right. That's right, man. Exactly. And then at the end, once I do know they're interested, now I'm starting to present the deal to them, but then I'm also starting to take it away, brother. As soon as I show it to them, I'm pulling it away from them.
Yeah.
So I show it to them and then I pull it away from them. So in the next couple of weeks, they've committed. Now they don't have weeks and months to make a decision. They've got to make a decision and wire the money into closing in the next month or less.
Man, this all sounds, we're obviously in sales as well, right? This is all sales, man. That's
right.
This is, it's incredible how you're using, certain techniques from certain strategies from understanding sales and applying it to raising funding for your business, man. It's incredible. Awesome. Yeah. Man. Quick question for you. If our listeners, if they don't have let's say a proven track record, how difficult is it for them to get started in something like this?
Jamel, listen, it's really not nearly as difficult as people make it sound. You could take a deal from your mentor. You guys are following Jamel. He's got lots of deals. You could say, hey, this is a deal that my mentor has done. When we do a deal, it will look like this. You could say, look, I'm looking for deals on the MLS or LoopNet, or I'm looking for deals from wholesalers. If I find a deal, it's going to look like this. Okay. And remember, at the beginning, if you don't have a long track record, you may just have to offset that by paying higher interest. My first private lender, Jamel, was my brother's mother-in-law. And I paid her 18% interest on her money on a 5-year note. So it was my first one. So I had to offset my lack of experience with higher interest. And how was she going to say no to 18% annualized return? Right? She's like, I just got divorced. She had some money left from the IRA that she inherited through the divorce. She was happy to give it to me. She gave me $60,000. By the time I gave it back to her, it was worth over $100,000. Mm-hmm. She loved me forever, referred me to everybody that she knew. And so you can offset your lack of experience with higher interest. You can offset your lack of experience with professionalism. Mm-hmm. Anybody can be good at putting together a PowerPoint. Anybody can buy a branded shirt that looks professional.
Yep.
Anybody can put together a nice website, even if you have no experience. Anybody can put together an online presence through, podcasting, YouTube, your Facebook page. All of that helps you build some credibility, even when you haven't done a lot of deals.
We have a mutual friend. I'm not going to mention his name on the podcast, but I've done a podcast with him as well. And he told me right now he owns, at that time, we're talking 3-4 months ago, he was right below 4,000 units. Mm-hmm. And he told me that when he first started acquiring properties, which was about 5-6 years ago, he would offer, I think it was 67% equity to the private investor, and he would take the lower end of the bargain. And he basically built it up over time to where now he can make better deals for himself. But the whole point, the big takeaway from that is just to get started. That's what Josh is saying. If you don't have the experience, go ahead and offer more interest, offer the professionalism, offer the creditability in your experiences, and eventually you'll be able to get the deals that you're looking for. But in the meantime, you're going to need to build a name for yourself with your investors. This is a relationship building process, guys. That's what this is. And this is exactly, Josh has dropped some nuggets today. And you guys, again, if you're not catching him, I'm not sure what you're listening to. You need to go back and listen to it again, because this stuff has been fantastic. I picked up a couple of pointers today, and I'm planning on implementing. So that's what we as real estate investors do. Those who become successful, they listen. They're humble enough to listen to everybody, but at the same time, they don't just listen, they apply. That's what it's all about. You got to just do something, get started. Josh told his story today about how he became successful wholesaling short sales. He unfortunately he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, which kind of set him back a little bit. But while he had the pancreatic cancer, he was figuring out other ways. He was forced to build a stronger business because of the pancreatic cancer. And then his wife and his kid was going through some things at that time as well. It's all happening at one time, but he didn't let that stop him. Too many people have too many excuses. You gotta stop making excuses and start doing something. Start taking control of your situation. Then he talked about how he got into doing 40K flips. He had a program on that. I'm sure some of you guys have probably heard about it. Got into apartment acquisition, still doing wholesaling in apartments today, in small apartments, large apartments, and private funding, and all different aspects of the real estate business. But this goes to show you that, considering where he started to where he is now, and failing forward and pivoting and making adjustments in his business, at the end of the day, guys, anybody can do this. You just got to be willing to get out there, roll up your sleeves, and get to work. Don't be afraid. Don't let fear stop you. One thing, I recently had a conversation with a friend of mine, Josh, and I told him, because he's afraid to get started. I'm like, don't be selfish, basically, right? Because by you being selfish, you're preventing yourself and your family and everybody else who's in your circle the opportunity to have a better life. That's right. Because of something that So by you not taking action, you're being selfish.
Yeah,
right? You're being selfish.
Great advice.
So you gotta be willing to let all the noise go. Forget about everything that you hear from different people and all the naysayers and all of that garbage, and just get out there and do, and let the results speak for themselves. That's at that point, man. Great call, man. This has been a really. I've been wanting to get you on for a little while. I think I told you that earlier in the podcast, but I've been trying to get you on, and I've just been so busy with my own personal businesses and stuff like that. And I finally saw you on Facebook the other day. I said I got to reach out to Josh, man. Yeah. And I knew this was going to be a great call.
Oh man, I appreciate that.
Oh man, it's always a pleasure supporting you and what you do, man. And I appreciate you supporting the podcast today, brother. If our listeners wanted to get in contact with you, what should they do, or how should they go about getting in contact with you?
Yeah, I mean, they can find me on Facebook. Just look up Josh Cantwell. And also our main website is called Freeland. This is our investment company, freelandventures.com. On that site, you can get my book for free. It's called The Flip System. That book has a lot of the strategies that we talked about today, a lot of the stories about pancreatic cancer, things I learned along the way, raising capital. Those 5 steps is in the book, The Flip System. And you can either get it free digitally. You can just, name an email, get it digitally, or you can get it, we'll ship it to you for free. Just pay the shipping, all of it at freelandventures.com.
Awesome, man. Are you reading any books, by the way?
Oh yeah, man. I'm a voracious Audible listener.
Me too, man.
My favorite strategy is to listen to a book one time, and I listen at 1.5 times speed. Then I buy the book, physical book. Then I go back through it at about 2 times speed with the book in my hand, a physical book, because that's the way that I was a very slow reader growing up. Like I was very terrible at reading in English in high school. I was off the charts in math and horrible at English and spelling. So I really have a hard time sitting and reading still. But if I listen to it first, and then if I can read it with my eyes and a yellow highlighter, I find I can retain more of that information, and I do more with that. Books I've gone through recently is like The Pumpkin Plan by Michael Michalowicz, Profit First by Michael Michalowicz.
I love Michael Michalowicz, man.
Yeah. Extreme Ownership, Jocko Willink. Love his books. The Dichotomy of Leadership, Jocko Willink. I've been through that. Man, my Audible account's full of books, but those are just a couple that I've been through recently.
Mike Michalowicz has a book on, let me look in on I'm not going to look for it right now, but he has a really good book on basically understand, I think it's Pay Yourself First or something like that.
Yeah, Profit First.
Profit First. That was one of the first books that I listened to on Audible. I was in a gym, I listened to it within a week, and that's how I was introduced to Mike Michalowicz, man.
Yeah.
Awesome books, awesome guy as well. But I'm going to link all of the information on Josh in the description box, guys. I'm also going to link the books that he's reading right now so that you guys can check him out. And I'm also going to link his website. Check him out at, are you still at Shrek.com?
So freelandventures.com is got all of our stuff there. Links to our podcast, links to our books, links to our investment, a bunch of our apartment case studies. It's all there.
Gotcha. I'm going to link that in the description box as well in the show notes. If you're listening to this on Apple or on any of the podcast platforms, be sure to check this video out on YouTube as well, so you can see Josh face to face, and also get all of the information in the description box on the YouTube channel as well. Like this video, subscribe to it. Be sure to rate this podcast. Let me know what questions you guys may have for Josh. Maybe we'll have him on again in the future.
I'd love to come back
to doing that. And if you guys need anything in your real estate investing business, let us know so that we can help you go from where you are right now to where you want to go in your business. It's been a real pleasure, brother. I appreciate it. Any last words for our listeners?
Oh, Jamel, listen, a couple things like funding equals freedom. You've got to get good at raising private money. People that own big portfolios certainly use some form of private money in their business. Funding equals freedom. That's a big one for sure. And just, take the advice that I took from my father, man. Whatever you're going through now, what's not really important what you're going through, it's the lessons that you're paying attention to as you go through it, and look for lessons, look for teaching moments. And you say, like, wow, where is that going to apply to my life in the future? Going through pancreatic cancer, I could have just kept my head down and say, oh, man, woe is me. This really sucks. I'm really in a bad spot. But my dad encouraged me to keep my head up and look for what are the teaching lessons, and I'm still applying those today.
Man, great advice. Josh, man, you're going to have a movie one day, bro.
I hope so.
Know where you heard it first.
Yeah, that's right. I'll bring you on as a partner, man. We'll do something together. That's fantastic.
Definitely, man. But hey, man, it's been a real pleasure. It's a pleasure having you guys listen to us today, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care.